Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm here with my buddy Laura, and we've been getting some messages from people asking us to talk about a few different topics. And the one that keeps coming up is principal-teacher relationships, which I think is a really interesting thing for us to engage in together. And it's a topic we've talked about before, and it came up for me a couple of weeks ago. I was in another state doing a professional development day on student-teacher relationships and talking about how these really impactful teachers help students feel safe, seen, and stretched. And one of the school administrators said, I feel like that's the same thing I should be doing for my teachers. And he was such a good, caring person, and I could tell he was really invested in his teachers. And I thought, that's something I'm gonna have to ask Laura about. Like, is that notion of relationships the same as we think about our students? So I'm wondering, what do you think about that?
So when you just said that, I had like all these feelings for that principal and thought I want to go work there, except I don't do snow. Yes, we do need to feel safe, seen, and stretched. And I think that in many ways that could be an umbrella for all the ideas that I just showed up today thinking about. When you told me you wanted to talk about what teachers need from principals, I thought about a lot of things, and then I kind of categorized them into how summaries basically, but safe, seen, and stretched would probably cover all of them. And I think especially the first one, being safe, is super important. Yeah.
So like physically safe, of course, I think goes without saying that we have the kind of structures and procedures and things in place at school that keep us from feeling in danger, assaulted, challenged in ways that feel unsafe. That's like bottom rung, right? Basics. But then I think about that notion of like psychological safety, but also this construct of trust between a principal and a teacher. And Shannon Moran and Hoy are the two researchers who research trust in schools, and they have all these components of trust. But one of them is benevolence. Like, I have your back. I have your best interest at heart. I'm on your side. And I think that is so important to let teachers know that teachers don't always like, as principals, decisions we make or the things that we have to do. But if they know we are on their side, maybe that still preserves some of that trust.
Yeah, actually, one of my thoughts about what we need from administrators is about transparency and honesty. And you have no trust if you don't have transparency and honesty. We have nothing if you're not transparent. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking immediately of I've been working with my AP Lit student with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we all learn in our ed psychology, ed psychology. And I'm trying to get them to apply it to characters. Like, how are they growing? Where are they stopped? Why are they stopped? And I think it might be nice if administrators thought about that too. Why don't you want teachers who are self-actualized? I would think you would. They're going to be the best teachers in your building. And so where are they stopped, and why are they stopped on that hierarchy all the way up to self-actualization? And how are they, if they are self-actualized, and how are they bringing their kids along to self-actualization? Because I think no matter what you're teaching, no matter what curriculum you're using or grade you're in, that's the job, right? To help kids become learners, and at whatever stage they are, to self-actualize in their learning and in their sense of selves. And that doesn't start from nowhere. So if you can bring your teachers to that, you're halfway there.
So I'm thinking about that as a former principal, and having some teachers like that who knew themselves, knew their craft, and there's something about that makes a person very empowered. So self-actualized, smart, highly skilled, empowered will challenge you.
Yes.
And you have to be the kind of principal that actually likes being challenged by really effective teachers if you're going to encourage them to be self-actualized and empowered. Questions, they're going to push back on things. They're going to bring their own ideas to the table. So I think you have to be very confident in your leadership. You have to know your stuff too.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can be really uncomfortable with some very skilled, empowered teachers.
That makes sense. I think one of the things that I've been hearing, not just on my campus, but with teachers I work with from other campuses, is that we want to see our leaders model the leadership they're trying to see in our classrooms. And so your communication with teachers should be nurturing and open and honest and listening.
Two-way, yeah.
Two-way and all about growth. If we're not talking about something that is going to help me as an educator grow, then why are we talking?
Right.
And if I'm having conversation with my student, like a one-on-one especially, and it's not designed to help them grow, well, I'm wasting their time.
That, when we talked a couple months ago about why teachers are quitting, some of them said because I was being managed and not developed. I wasn't growing. And I remember thinking as a principal that I needed to make decisions based on my very best teachers and run things by them. And so we started with each faculty meeting agenda attaching an article, like not a super long, super academic article, but a real practitioner focused article with some strategy that would be helpful. And I worried about overloading them, like, would it be too much? And asking my very best teachers, and they were like, yes, it saves us from trying to search for things ourselves. We can learn together. They were all surprisingly all about it. But we have to, as principals, see ourselves as sort of lead learners.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to develop teachers, we can't be stagnant and not wanting to learn.
Yes. So I actually just had this conversation this week with an administrator. We had this weird sort of, in my district, they've been doing something called impact review. So they're bringing like 15, 20 people from the district level into schools. And then they're like just spreading out like a virus and seeing everything. And then they're getting together and talking about how awful it was. That's my summary of an impact review. And then they bring in like, oh, these are the ideas that are going to help you. So we had this.
I'm just gonna check my understanding. So they're going to spend one day, maybe less than a day.
Oh, no. At my school, it was 2 and maybe a half periods.
Okay, so you're going to spend a couple hours in your school that, like every school, has a unique culture, context,
right,
serves a specific community.
Yes.
And they're going to tell you what's wrong.
Correct.
Wow.
And how we can fix it.
They're going to fix it. It must be nice to sweep in and have all the answers.
I know. Well, and that's where the modeling leadership comes in for us. If you have answers, first of all, you need to clarify the problem, like actually tell us the problem. Don't tell us, well, no, everything went okay. It was good. Here's a couple things to think about. And then a few days later at my school, it was, hey, do this.
Wow. Which is based on so many assumptions, unless they had a really deep dialogue with you. I know I was telling you, I listened to Ken Futernick's Teacher Stories podcast, and he was interviewing, oh gosh, I can't remember his name, who was talking about doing an observation in a teacher's classroom as a researcher. And this little boy was sitting in the back alone, and she was calling up small groups and helping kids, and she did not at all interact with him. Other kids didn't interact with him. And he said, like, throughout the morning, he got more and more angry at this teacher. How could she be so cruel? Why was she ignoring this kid? So at some point in the afternoon, he had a chance to talk with her. And it turns out this little guy's brother had been shot and killed the night before. And he came into school, and she had had a conversation with him when he came in and said, I know this is shocking. I know this must be a really hard day. Come into the lesson and interact at whatever level you're comfortable. When you need us, let us know, but we're going to give you space. So he could have made all these assumptions.
Yeah.
And he did at first about this teacher. And then when he had a conversation and asked questions, he realized she was actually so far above what he was thinking. And when you breeze into somebody's classroom or school and you look at things without really asking questions, without this sort of lens of curiosity, and you think that you know because you've watched it for an hour, I don't know, that makes me a little crazy in my head.
Yeah. It's terribly judgmental. It's the whole thing we were taught as kids, not to judge a book by its cover, not to judge a person, how they appear, but to get to know them and what's going on. And education just flies in the face of that, is what we're seeing.
We should be the ones like trafficking in curiosity over judgment. You know, that should be our whole frame.
Yeah. And that's part of the modeling, I think, that we're all looking for. Model the leadership you want to see in us. So that goes back to the conversation I was having with an administrator this last week, which was, if you want to roll out something new, something completely different from everything we've been taught is right, start with the research and tell us why we should be looking at this. Just like I would with my students. Do you think I never ask my students to do something without a why? And that's just something you should be modeling. I heard after I don't know, not a PD, but a meeting maybe from another school, a teacher say, well, they would have gotten requires action on that because they're not using or modeling what they want to see in us. And if we're modeling what we want to see in our students, then you should be modeling what you want to see in your teacher.
Right. And teachers need to know this thing that I'm asking you to do has an evidence base. Like, we know it's effective. We think it could help our kids. Here's why. And it's not hard to find that. I think you and I had talked about the What Works Clearinghouse, which is a website. What Works Clearinghouse is federally sponsored, funded, but there's this independent panel of researchers, and all they do is pull all the studies about different strategies, programs, issues, and they come up with, first they make sure that they meet their standards, and then they come up with an effectiveness rating for all these different things. I would never implement anything, would never buy any resource without going to that website and at least doing an initial check. Like, you can go way deeper. It'll lead you to all these other articles. But if you don't at least understand what the literature says about it, don't start rolling it out. That's I think malpractice.
But Julie, I think that what a lot of administrators and not just building administrators, like higher level administrators even, just like kind of shortcut that with, I know it's right and you shouldn't question me. And that's that old style of parenting, like, don't do it because I said not to do it. And like, none of us respond to that. No kids respond to that. No adults respond to that. And I think the only time you can get someone to respond to that is if you have a tremendous base of trust already built.
Or if you threaten them. Like, if you threaten them, they'll do that.
Maybe. That's a maybe. Like, if you said to me, Laura, this is this research-based strategy, I want you to try in your classroom, tell me what you think. I wouldn't ask you for all of the research because I 100% trust you.
But part of that is, so if we think about like Shannon Moran and Hoy's components of trust, and we talked about a few, we talked about benevolence. You said transparency and honesty, which are top. One is confidence. And so part of why you would trust me in that is because you know I read a lot. And you kind of know my background. And there are principles I would trust because I know they've checked it out. I know they know the research. I know they're constantly reading and learning and trying to sharpen their tools.
Right.
So if the principal who's telling you that doesn't have that, you don't have that sense of their competence in instruction, you would hesitate to take that advice.
Well, right. And Principal X could be reading the journals all the time and keeping up with the research all the time. But if you don't have transparency and honesty, there's no way for the faculty to know that. And then all the faculty knows is you're pushing the district's agenda or the next best thing. And if you haven't created those relationships and the honesty and the transparency of personality, even, nobody knows.
It's true. That's interesting. Okay, we talked about trust and that sense of safety. And I had another interesting conversation that made me think about you and this topic. So a couple of my students, they work at the same school, and I had them for a class last week, and they were getting ready for conference night. So for their conference day, they had a half day, and then the afternoon was like professional time, and then was conference night.
Wow.
So their principal and AP, I know, like with the best of intentions, brought in a yoga instructor for the afternoon. Best, they knew teachers were stressed. Teachers were so much more stressed because they were trying to get ready for conference night. And they were in yoga class and they were so frustrated. And so I'm thinking about this idea of, do we ask people what they really need? Or do we hear a little bit and kind of decide that this is what they need?
Well, and I mean, honestly, even in the private sector, this isn't just a school thing, a school leadership thing. In the private sector, they're always throwing solutions at a problem without understanding what people need. Like, oh, a pizza party or a jeans day or wear a funny hat. Nobody cares about that. Like, we care about being treated as professionals across the spectrum. And so that's part of transparency to me, Julie. If you're not asking me what I need, if you don't understand what your faculty needs, then you are not a transparent leader and they are not comfortable with you. Mm-hmm. Transparency works both ways. If you are not open with me, I am not open with you, period.
And it goes to that feeling seen. Like if someone asks you what you need and really listens and tries to do something to help with that, you feel so validated and valued and seen. I remember doing after school walkthroughs because that's when kids are gone. And I wasn't trying to see instruction. I just wanted to know what they were worried about, what they needed, what I could help with. It was the best time, but then you have to do something with that. So you can't just ask them how they are, listen and not try to provide some kind of support. And I've really been thinking about that since those teachers told me that story as a spouse, as a mom, as a teacher of grad students, as a friend. Am I asking people, what do you need? And how can I help you? How can I support you? Instead of thinking I know what they need.
Right.
And doing that.
My school likes to do things like Cold Stone. They bring a Cold Stone truck and you can go and you can get ice cream, which sounds lovely. But I don't eat sugar. So it's not hitting me. Right. And all of the like lactose intolerant people. And then also you have to be willing to give up 20 minutes to stand in line to get your ice cream. And so and it's nice. And I accept the effort to try to nurture me or, like create some familial bond or show that the administration cares about the teachers, but you're not hitting it if you don't know that I don't have 20 minutes to stand there and wait for my ice cream. And you're not hitting it if you're having steak dinners and you have 10% of a vegan faculty. Those kinds of things where the leaders aren't necessarily plugged in and meeting the teachers where they are, which goes back to modeling. Like, I'm responsible for meeting students where they are, and you're responsible for meeting me where I am.
So what, as a teacher, and I know you can't speak for all teachers, but what is it that teachers really need from principals right now, besides yoga and ice cream?
Well, one, transparency. Two, follow through. I have a friend who last year at the end of the year, I had my like end of the year conversation with the principal before she did. And I said, well, he's going to ask you, what do you need from me? And she was like, easy. What I need from you is absolute expectations that are clear and fair and that are followed through. So like follow through is huge. I hear it on my campus all the time. I hear it from people at other campuses. We also are looking for some accountability. If I'm going to be accountable to you, friend, you are accountable to me. That's just the bottom line.
It's just good relationships.
Right.
Isn't it?
Yes.
And followed through. So we'll go back to Shannon Moran and Hoy, my faves. We've gone through all these components. Reliability is one of the components, which is do what you say you're going to do.
Yes.
Be reliable.
Yes.
But it's also respond in an emotionally predictable way. So sometimes I talk to teachers who say, like, when my principal comes in and she's wearing the red shoes, then I know it's good. So if somebody is like emotionally up and down, you know, that's a heck of a place to work, and that's a trust breaker. But so is someone who never follows through. Like you invest your time in having this conversation and figuring out a solution, and then it never comes to fruition because nothing gets done.
Right. Or you've got a new rule and it's this big sweeping change. Okay. You know what? Like, I know it might not seem like it to some of the people watching this video, but I'm such a team player and I am so loyal. And so if you are my administrator and I love my school, like, honestly, I've been there 22 years. Obviously, there's a lot of love between me and my school. If you tell me this is the new way, this is what we're doing, we won't stand for X and Y anymore, it's all Z, then guess what? I better see you not standing for X and Y.
Right.
And that is across the board one of the biggest complaints I hear from teachers all over. Not that I know everybody, but man,
is it that are they avoiding having those difficult conversations? Is it just avoiding that whole thing? Like, I'm uncomfortable holding people to account and having a difficult conversation.
So can I respond to you honestly, like a teacher? I don't care. I don't care why. If you tell me X and Y are over and it's all Z now, I don't care if you're not comfortable.
It's your job.
Do the hard work. Do the hard work. I do it every day.
Practice it. Get more comfortable.
Get in the mirror if you need to. Whatever you need to do, but you have got to follow through. And this is actually a thing that has come up a number of times just on my campus. We have rules, right? And teachers have rules, and I expect to follow some rules. I expect to break some rules because I'm not going to follow everything, and nobody is, right? But if I'm not following something, I expect you, Julie, my principal, to come to me and say, Laura, we've asked you to look at dress code every day, all the time, and students are coming into your classroom half naked and leaving half naked, and you're not addressing it. And we want to know what's the problem. How can we support you? What's the solution? What do we need to do? But instead of that, we on my campus do a lot of like an email to everyone. Hey, everyone needs to do a better job, or everyone needs to do XYZ. And it's just shocking.
And the good teachers are all like, oh my gosh, is that about me? But
Right.
the ones who need to hear it are like, it's not about me.
Actually, one of my neighbors, perfect example, he decided to cover his whole window with paper so you can't see it. And there's a security problem. And I understand the bottom line is, like, if there were an emergency, police would need to be able to see in, or administrators should be able to walk by and see what's going on in your room.
What are you doing in there?
Right. So I don't know, maybe 5 people on campus, 1 person in my hallway, 5 people on campus have their whole window covered. So we're getting messages on Teams like, hey, you can cover your windows. And I'm thinking, really? Are you kidding? Hey, don't forget, everybody needs to uncover it, like multiple. So I finally said to my neighbor, hey, we're not supposed to cover our windows. You need to uncover your window, because we're friends. I can be honest with him. And he said, yeah, I'm not going to worry about that until they say something to me.
Oh, that's the best.
Multiply him by the hundreds of thousands around the country who are waiting to hear something about themselves.
Hey, but it's frustrating to the people who are trying to do what we've agreed upon.
Right.
And getting the emails. And you know exactly who it is.
Right. Deal with them. And when I'm breaking a rule that bothers you, deal with me, and deal with me honestly and professionally, not with some email that goes to the whole school that I can just disregard because that wasn't about me, but come to me.
Teach whole sessions of graduate classes on how to have a difficult conversation. It's a whole strategy. It's a plan. There are steps. There are books about it. We role play it. We do all the things because it's such a make or break for a leader to be able to have an uncomfortable conversation with people. It makes your relationship better because you've talked about whatever the elephant is, right? It makes the other people in the building respect you more, be more likely to follow with the things that we agreed upon. It makes the really good, conscientious teachers very happy when you have that conversation. We have to do that. We're all exhausted. Nobody likes to do it. It's part of our work, right?
I don't like to do it with my students. I don't like to say, hey, Billy, you have a 12% in my class. This is a graduation requirement. I'm worried that you're not going to pass. What's going on? That's not a comfortable conversation for anyone, me or Billy's parents. But a much worse conversation is when Billy doesn't graduate because he can't pass my English class, because he doesn't come to school, or he comes to school in various stages of high, or he doesn't do anything, or whatever the reasons are. That's way worse. And I would think it would be way worse. And I don't know if anyone tracks this, but I'm kind of assuming that they do. It would be way worse to lose all of your top-notch teachers from a school because you're not dealing with them. Right. It would be way worse for me, one of your top teachers, and that's like, sorry, that's just my pride. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I am.
As a parent of 2 students who've been in your classroom, I will agree with your assessment of your skills.
So, don't ignore me. Shape me, help me grow. If I'm doing something you don't like, help me, because I'm like Billy. I don't want to fail. I don't want to not graduate. I don't want to not be the best teacher or community member or club sponsor or peer or teacher leader or whatever. I want to be the best. Help me be the best. And I think so many of us are driven in that same way. That's what brought us here. Like, we're high achievers. We want to be the best. And I think education banks on that. That's what our evaluations are all about, like pitting us against each other. Who has the highest score? Who's going to be the best? I want to be the best. If you're not helping me grow, what are we doing?
And how powerful is it when someone in a position of authority, whether it's a teacher with a student or a leader with us, takes the time to say, you could do better. You have more potential than this. Here are some
Yes.
ways I think you could improve.
Yes.
It's just that they took the time and pushed back past that discomfort to
Yes.
invest in that way with us is a powerful thing.
Absolutely. That's the ultimate I see you and you matter. And it
Mhm.
might be uncomfortable. And we've all had conversations with students where we're like, well, that was really rough. And the student is very mad walking away. But if you give it, I don't know, 3 weeks, a month, that student actually is grateful you had the conversation. And it's even a shorter realization for an adult who wants to grow and wants to really do well in their career. We're not here by accident. We didn't just like tumble into being teachers. This was planned, it was plotted, we worked toward it, and we want to be great. And I think that bottom line, everything that I noted as the things we want from administrators is we want you to help us be great.
The stretched, right? Help us stretch.
Exactly. Stretch me. That's why I thought that was the perfect phrase for what we're looking for, because it's not just being safe, which safe is first. If we're going back to Maslow, we got to be safe. And I feel safe on my campus, and probably, luckily, most of us do. I know that there are some campuses people don't feel safe. And so, like, honestly, they need to go somewhere they feel safe, period. Because we can't do anything if we're not safe. But then see me, and because you see me, you know how to help me stretch. You cannot help me stretch if you don't really see me. And that's, I don't know, like, what percentage, Julie, you tell me, what percentage of your job as an administrator is to see me and help me stretch?
Really, it's the most important part of our job. And as you're talking, I'm thinking intuitively, maybe not all of us as school leaders, but most of us know that. We know that relationships are the thing. We know what we should be doing. And so as you're talking in my head, I'm thinking, what gets in the way of that? Like, if we know that that is what's important.
It has to be all of that outside. Like, when I say outside, I mean outside the building, all of the things coming at them, right? I think that we talked about before that administrators are actually like middle management, and we don't really realize that necessarily as teachers, because administrators are held up as being the end, like the buck ends here, but it doesn't. They're middle management, and so there's so much coming at them all the time. And that I get it, and I am 100% sympathetic to it until it starts to affect me and my students. And then I feel like, get it together, just get your shit together. I have to get my shit together every single day, and you can get your shit together too.
It's true. And it's, when I've done the job and I prepare people to do the job, it's the hardest job ever. It really is. There's constant urgency. It's 24/7. Your phone can ring and there's a fire in the mechanical room or whatever it is. You know, I remember getting a call at the middle of the night that one of our families was in a terrible accident, and, you know, trying to figure out how do we deal with that. It's a constant, high pressure job.
Yes.
But at the same time, the important thing we do is support the teachers who support our kids. Like, that's the job. Create the conditions in which teaching and learning can happen. And I think in order to do that, what we really have to be is fully present in that process. Like, push aside all the stuff that's coming down on us, all the political stuff, all the requirements, all the whatever, all the stress, all the ruminating, and just try to hold space for our people. And love, you've got to love your people, like really love your people to do that job well, even when they disappoint you, even when you're frustrated, even when whatever. Hold space for them, be there for them, and just like love on them.
Yeah. And of course you and I have talked about this many, many times, only knowing each other for like 40 years. I'm not a big giant picture person. I don't want to be an administrator. I've never wanted to be an administrator. And as many times as you've encouraged me to like, hey, look at this MED program. Hey, do you want to look at school leadership? No, 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 no. And it's not because I think I couldn't do it. I think it's because I don't want to do it. I want to work with kids. I want to nurture and help kids grow. I don't want to nurture adults and help adults grow, like maybe in my personal life, but not in my professional, right? So if that's not what you're here for, like for me, that's always been it. That's the difference. And I don't know that every administrator thinks that way. And I feel like if you're not here to help adults grow, what are you here for?
Right. Because in this role as a principal, that's how you help kids.
Right.
Is you make sure they have the best teachers, that their teachers have what they need to support the kids. It's not a skip over the teachers, impact the kids. Teachers are the path to impacting the kids.
Right.
And the best principals I know understand that so well and just really love and support their teachers. That's how they help kids.
But some teachers are unlovable. And I think that's a truth we have to acknowledge right here. But also, sometimes it's really hard to love a kid. You have to love them.
Same.
Right. From like a holistic point of view, like this is a person and I love you and want you to be your best. It's a different, it's yeah. And I don't think that teachers are always lovable.
Do you find, so I'm thinking about all the different teachers I work with as an AP or principal, because that was a decade plus of my work life. And it's just like with students, and I don't want to like belittle adults.
No, I think it's a very similar relationship.
You find something that's a strength.
Yes.
And you grow that strength and you find something lovable about them. And even the hardest ones I've had, there was something lovable about them. And if you could just plug them in the right way or give them the right kind of encouragement, they would grow. Every now and then there's an exception.
Right.
For whatever reason, somebody's not coachable, doesn't want to grow. And usually it's something going on in their life outside of school. And so those people, you have to have those conversations to say, is this job the right fit for you right now? And counsel them out sometimes.
Sure.
But those were very few for me. I mean, there were some, but most of the time you could find something to build on. And right now we have to do that because we don't have 20 of them waiting to take a job. If we lose our teachers, it's really hard to replace them right now. So we might as well invest in them and grow them and try to help them become excellent.
Yeah. And honestly, like in my department alone, which, so my school is an unusual school. It's really one of the nicest schools in our county, just really like nice, solid kids, nice, solid community. We have 2 vacancies in my department. That's how few people are beating down the doors to come and teach in my county. So you're right. You've got to make the best of what is in your building. Just like I have to make the best of who is sitting in my classroom.
And don't you think like when you really love on your teachers and you make it a good place to work, they tell their friends. And then when you have an opening, one of your great teachers' friends applies for that opening.
Yes.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to work here. Getting that reputation of being the place people want to work, only brings the best talent your way and makes your job as an administrator even easier. So I guess it's maybe a lot more work on the front, but maybe a little less work on the back. But again, I'm just gonna like honestly be on the administration side here. When you're overwhelmed with directives that don't necessarily make sense and, you know, knew this and knew that and do this and do that, maybe you can't see that far. Maybe you can't realize it.
I think that's heavy. And when you're threatened with your own job,
Yes.
and at times threatened with your teachers' jobs, you know, state takeover of your school, everybody will have to reapply. You know, we know,
Right.
especially in Florida, those kinds of threats are happening. Fear is never a great thing for a leader, certainly not a great thing for a teacher. And I do believe that principals, for the most part, for sure, are doing the best they can and the best they know how to do, and working really, really hard. So I try to give them the most benevolent assumptions because I know how hard it is, and I know that they want their teachers to be happy and well. I don't think they always know how to do that, and I don't think they always have sort of the space mentally, physically to do that.
So something that I think I want administrators to know is that teachers know that too. In every conversation, across not just my school, but other schools, it is always said, but the pressure on these administrators, the pressure on these principals is too much. They're doing the best they can. Every teacher I know acknowledges that. It doesn't change the fact that they are reeling from directives that don't make sense or feeling like they're being lied to. But we know that. And so I think, like, I talked to a friend of ours who's an AP, and I said to her, this was a couple of years ago, like, there is an us and them mentality between administrators and teachers. And if we could just get rid of that wall, oh my gosh, imagine what we could do. Because it's not us and them, it's all of us for them, the kids.
And I really think so much of that is part of the system. Like, if we could coach more than we have to evaluate, that would be a really helpful change.
Yeah.
So some of it is just the positions that we're put in with our evaluation system. But I also think there's a way to use some of those things as coaching opportunities if we really try.
I agree. But then you are also in a place where sometimes the coaching isn't really coaching. You know, I don't know. It's hard and it's complicated. And I said to an actual coach, like a sport ball coach recently, there comes a time, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I've never been on a sport. She was like, okay, I got you. So there comes a time when you look at your team and you say, y'all are sucking right now. Like, this is not working. And she said, absolutely. Okay. So I need that moment. I need that conversation that is transparent. This was a failure. We are not okay. And I said, and then I think there comes a time when you have to look at your player and you say, Miller, every time we hand you the ball, you let us down. What's the problem? And she said, absolutely, you have to do that. So I think there's a lot in you said coaching, like, there's a lot in the coaching realm that could be so beneficial in this administrator role. And in my county, we've got a lot of coaches as administrators, and I don't understand why they don't bring that with them. Like, is it beaten out of them by the time they get to that level? Because it makes sense to me. Even not being a sport baller, I expect to be called out on dropping the ball. One time, every time, call me out. Tell me what's happening, because maybe I'm not seeing the whole picture. You're the coach. You see what everyone is doing on the court. I'm worried about my play.
Yeah. And ask me questions, and let's back up and let's talk about how I can do this better.
Right.
But in order to do that, you have to have a level of instructional expertise. And that's where I think some of our principals who bring in coaching backgrounds get a little freaked out because now I'm coaching somebody in an instructional role and I may not, which the onus then is on us as principals to sharpen those skills.
Yeah. Yeah. I had many years ago, I had an evaluation where I had a student who was very difficult, a little bit explosive, and she and I had worked out, like sometimes she just got sensory overload. She needed to take a sensory break. And we had a plan. We knew how it worked. And I was getting an evaluation and I told my evaluator, this is what we're doing. If you see her put her head down, trust me, she's with us. She just needs to like close out her visual, keeps her auditory open. She did that. She still participated in class just with her head down. It was great. And I remember sitting in her office and the administrator saying to me, Laura, I think you could have done better with that student. And I said, oh, tell me how. Tell me what I could do better, because you know me, I always want to do better. Tell me. And she said, oh girl, I don't know, but I think you could do better. So we have nothing.
Yeah, that's not coaching. Like the football coach doesn't tell you, you could have run that play better. Right. I don't know how, but you could.
Right. It just didn't look quite right, and you could have done better.
Something was off, but I'm not sure what.
Right. So
they would sit with you and watch the video from the game and talk like move by move about what you could do. And so that's not coaching.
Right.
That's an opinion.
I bring that up really because that's what principals need to be, is coaches. And if you don't know, it's your job to find out.
Or to plug you in with a resource. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's okay to say, I feel like there's a better way to do this, but I'm not super sure what that is. But I have a feeling the instructional coach knows, or guidance might have some ideas, or this peer, I've seen this peer do this thing.
Yep.
So I'm going to plug you in with this person. Totally fine, but come with something.
Right. Right. And so it's always okay not to know. I actually have a poster in my classroom that says this. It's okay not to know. It's not okay to not try. Right.
Or to remain unknowing.
Right. So you can try to find out how to know. And so if you don't know, administrator, do some of the legwork before you sit down for that coaching, before you sit down for those conversations. And that actually, going back to something we talked about before, like why aren't those things happening? Those conversations and all the reasons, I'm kind of realizing this now. Maybe they don't know what to say and they don't have the time, because time, oh my gosh, administrators have no time, zero. Do they always have the time to find what they need to give or to grow? I don't know. I don't know where they would find the time. Like you said, middle of the night, you're getting phone calls. High school, oh my gosh, all the time. I know they're getting phone calls, or running up to the school because an alarm is out or whatever. Where do they find the time?
Which speaks to something that I've been doing for a few years now, which is principal coaching. So I get to coach principals.
Yes.
And perhaps missing here is, if we want our principals to be exceptional so that their teachers can be exceptional, then we have to provide as a district them with the support and resources and help they need. And help them, just like their teachers, identify areas where they could grow, point them in the direction of those areas. So yeah, I think there's a lot we could unpack and figure out here. But
well, I think too, in education, there's this idea about time, that every minute has to be filled. And I saw that, especially, like, maybe, I don't even think I knew that until we went on e-learning, like when we locked down in the spring of 2020. And all of a sudden, like, we had to try to account for every minute of our day. And I was like, I'm teaching. I'm busy. What do you mean account for it? And so I realized like administrators also are being held accountable for time. It's almost like if we gave you a spare hour, you wouldn't do something good for your practice, your educational practice. You would just like, I don't know, shop online or something. So, but you need time. Administrators need time. Teachers need time. Kids need time. We all need time. But there's such a push. And I have just kind of come to realizing that there's no time for administrators either.
There's not. And we have to take things off people's plates.
Yep.
And we have to stop thinking as a system, as a society, that any issue that we're struggling with gets solved in schools. Kids' mental health. You know, there's an increase in the suicide rate among teenagers since COVID. There's lots of mental health challenges. Why is school the place that has to solve that issue? I'm not sure we're the best equipped totally to solve that issue. And so there's continual piling on for principals and teachers to solve societal issues without extra resources. Florida and here in North Carolina, famous for unfunded mandates. So we're going to mandate something, but we're not going to give you really the resources you would need to do that well.
Right. And honestly, I understand why schools are the place that they choose. It's not fair, but it's the place that is a controlled environment. You can't tell parents what to do. You can't mandate anything that happens in a household or in a family or with a parent, but you can with teachers and you can with education. The problem is if you're going to add emotional health to the school, you have to take something away.
Or send in support. So
Well, right.
I've worked with a couple of districts who have gotten social emotional learning curriculum.
Oh yeah, we have that. We have that.
So how about instead of that, we actually put more counselors in the schools? Perhaps way to approach this instead of adding a curriculum, because I mean, really, who learns social and emotional skills from a worksheet or a curriculum? How about more social workers?
We have an online program that we have to do through the English department. Makes no sense. So yeah, but if you're going to have me do an online program on social and emotional health, you got to take something off of me as well. But they don't take anything.
Yeah. And I think principals feel the same thing. It's always added. It's always added. Nothing gets subtracted. Yep. There's no, in the same sense of loss of autonomy that you guys feel, they feel as well.
Right.
So I'm going to let you close us. One piece of advice for principals in relationships with teachers.
I'm going to say the simplest thing: build them, build the relationships. If you want to have a positive culture in your school and you want to know your teachers, build the relationships. And from everything I've read and everything I know from being, as I say to my students, 100 years old, relationships are built on shared experience. Share experience and really get to know them.
I love that. I think that's a great way to end. Know your people, love your people. Keep going, keep trying, mess up, apologize, start again.
Yes.
All the things.
Yep.
All right. Well, we hope that you all got some good strategies, some things to think about principal-teacher relationships. And we will see you back next time. Comment below if there's a topic you want us to talk about. Otherwise, we're going to wish you all well. Keep going. Your work matters, principals and teachers.
Yes.